is probably moving to Silicon Valley. And to a certain extent, you're proving that that is true. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that you know, the technology, well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. You know, I think, you know, in terms of actual physical locations, right now LA is still sort of the mecca for global filmmaking. Of course, there are capitals in each country for their you know, local language and culture markets, but filmmakers come from all over the world still to LA. In terms of technology, you know, obviously we're not shooting on film anymore. We're not editing on film anymore. The computer, the semiconductor, these are the revolutions that have been absorbed by the filmmaking community and used. And you know, obviously there are now methods of distribution that are internet-based and so on. So I think it's really more a merger of the two cultures and the two technical cultures as well.
There's a lot of research in the last years on neuroscience that are showing us how we think, how we make decisions, the role of emotions, even the role of our senses.
Yes.
Smell is apparently much more important than we thought it was.
Right.
Do you think that research will change the movie industry?
I think it's something that, like every new technology that comes along, every new insight that comes along, it gets absorbed, it gets used quickly. I mean, filmmakers are very, very rapid adopters of any new knowledge. I believe there needs to be more neuroscience. Let's talk about 3D, for example. There isn't enough neuroscience research being done right now on how we process 3D images and what that means to how we make memories, how we make emotional connections to the things that we see. We know, for example, from recent research, that a baby watching something on television knows that it's not real, knows that it's an abstraction or symbolic information, and discounts it completely relative to the same thing playing out, the same social scenario or the same bright objects or whatever, playing out actually in its presence, even though there's no touch component and even though there's no smell component. So what does that mean? Does stereo inhabit a middle ground? Does it fire neurons that don't normally fire when you're watching a flat display? We need more information on this. It could revolutionize advertising. It could revolutionize education, especially early learning. You know, we've already revolutionized entertainment, at least in the cinema, and we're on the way to doing that in the home. But what are the broader ramifications of this?
You mentioned that looking into the future, one of your milestones is consolidating this 3D industry. But let's go to your dreams. What are the unfulfilled dreams? What would you like to accomplish? You once prepared to go on space. It actually did not happen. Yeah. But what are the dreams you still have to live?
Well, I don't know if it's a dream, but I'm actually, you know, quite concerned about where we're going as a civilization with respect to our profligate use of energy and the way we're encroaching on the natural world. So I guess you could call it a dream of mine that we kind of wake up and learn to respect the natural world and indigenous people and learn to live more harmoniously instead of destroying nature, which we're doing in the pursuit of you know, growth economies and all of those reasons that we all have, but it's not a sustainable path. It's not going to get us to the end of this century you know, as a surviving civilization. So, you know, my dream is that we're gonna wake up. We're gonna see what needs to be seen, and so I'm, you know, and to that end, I'm putting my energies in that direction to the extent that I can.
If we were to end with your 4 recommendations to business people, what would those be? The lessons from the movie world to the business world that obviously are overlapped in many ways.
I probably need some time to think about that, but I'll take a crack at it. I would say, you know, to encourage creativity in the team and empower the team, and listen for good ideas. They don't have to be your ideas. To be less worried about hierarchy and structure. I think that the people that are the most powerful are the ones that are the most confident in their position of power and don't need to prove it all the time and don't need to beat other people over the head. It doesn't improve their performance to do that. And this is all the psychology of team building. I don't know if that's 1 or 2 things. You know, I would say take risks, but be very careful about how you take your risks. In other words, know that you need to take risk to be competitive, but be very disciplined and very analytical about how you take those risks so that you understand and prepare correctly to prevent a negative outcome. But don't be afraid to do it on a knee-jerk basis based on what advisors say. Oh, don't do that because nobody does that. When I hear that nobody's doing it, that's when I get interested. That makes it interesting. That might be 3. I guess the 4th one would be, and this is just a reflection of my personal philosophy, be personally ethical and moral, even if the situation doesn't require it. It builds a reputation, and ultimately, at the end of the day, your word is the most important thing that you bring into a room with you, and you can never erode that. And I know that probably sounds strange coming from somebody in Hollywood, but I've always operated that way.